Hello, welcome to the Football 360 show, the fastest hour of football talk on the planet. Coming at you live on X and YouTube as well. You can catch us both at Football 360 show on both of those, as well as everything Football 360 show on football360show.com, including a great interview with Lindenwood head coach Judd Stuttgart last week, which got a lot of great feedback on. My name is JP Rock. He is Matt Bierman. Matt, how you doing today?
Doing great.
So today's episode is brought to you by KC Varsity Combine. May the 4th is coming Saturday at Francis Howell High School. You don't want to miss out. You compete, test, you get to showcase your talent and skills in front of college coaches from D1 FCS schools, D2, D3, JUCO, and NAIA. You want to check it out. You want to earn an MVP slot at one of your positions, or the King of the Hill event is going to be happening, which if you follow me, JP Rock MO on Twitter, or even Matt, Elite Football.
Yep, Elite Football.
On X. Yeah. And on Instagram.
Yep, Elite Football Academy.
Elite Football Academy on Instagram as well. You saw some of the highlights for that. Local guy made good. Marcel Reed from Hazelwood Central won the King of the Hill strap. Just a great performance by him. Come on out, compete on that. It's going to be elite football heavy. Your coaches are going to be mob deep right there at the event out there coaching, and it's a great time had by all. So I was at that you new studio setup. So you were out in where were you? Indiana?
Columbus, Indiana.
Finishing up your football. Your
7-on-7 season football for us is over for the high school guys. Still got a lot of flag football for our young guys left, but it's kind of that the timing's there, because now, start this week, you got KC Varsity. Another week and a half from there, you got St. Louis Metro football coaches.
Oh, it is camp
2 weeks
season,
from there,
baby.
you got Lindenwood Mega Camp.
It is fast. Here, and everybody then team their camps are going to be doing. I know they've been doing some football spring practice, such as it is, but camp season is just upon us.
Yeah, it's interesting. Listen to a lot of the kids talk about how their teams are doing the summer, or let's call them spring workouts, leading into their summer.
Yeah.
And some teams do it all together, some teams don't do it. Some guys are full tilt, and I think the challenge is always with the dual sport athletes, right? I think that's really tough to navigate. So a lot of schools do it early in the morning or weekends, which then becomes problematic because families have things going on and kids have other things going, So it's a tough deal. I mean, it would be great to see one day Missouri just to actually do it like the other states do it and do a real spring ball. But, like a lot of people have a misconception about what spring ball really is in a lot of these other southern states. For instance, in Texas, they have their practice period, and then they go into the summer, whereas we have practices in the summer. They don't allow that. They just allow lifting and running throughout the summer with their team. So there's actually a cool-off period for those kids before they ramp back into the season, which, logically that makes a lot more sense. But, you'd have to have a buy-off from a lot of the different sports and ADs in our area to allow and relinquish control. So I think first step is really good the way they're doing it. There's no pads involved, and they're just practicing and kind of getting synchronization down.
Right. Which is good. And I'm fine with that because it is a year-round sport. So doing that's good. And like you said, the spring sports, it's tough. And you're seeing a lot of that with camp season popping up. I know that, a lot of guys run track. A lot of guys will play lacrosse, play baseball. And, it's tough for them to go on trips. It's tough for them to go to other events.
So I think that's an interesting thing. We were kind of having a conversation before the show. And, I always talk about this. You'll see on the national title game, there's always the graphic they throw up about dual sport athletes. And, one factor that they never mention in that graphic is how long did that athlete play 2 or 3 sports in high school?
Right.
They make it seem as though they left high school as a 3-sport athlete. Very rare today do you find a kid doing 3 sports back to back to back. The football, basketball, baseball guy, or football, basketball, lacrosse. It's just you don't see a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
And the reality of it is there is a huge push for kids to run track, which the debate with track is you see a lot of injuries, lower body injuries, because it is a grueling sport, right? It is great for speed development. But there is an argument to be made that there is more time to be used for cross training and training the athlete as a more holistic, because football is not a straight line sport. It's a multi-directional sport with a little bit of straight line to it. So there's the old school, hey, we used to run track when we were young. And then, but let's be honest, back in the day when there was track being run, let's call it in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, strength programs in high schools were very barbaric and old school, right? Just powerlifting, not focused on developing the athlete. That has changed quite a bit. And then on the flip side, there wasn't a lot of performance training where kids could actually learn how to move more efficiently under a science, driven program, which, across the country, there's many options for that. So, I think playing multiple sports is obviously a great thing when you're younger, so you can learn what you like, but also learn different modalities and movements and how to compete. But the day of the 3-sport athlete, they're few and far between. Not to say it can't exist, but it is very difficult. And you see those kids, let's just boil it down. So, if you are a 3-sport athlete, and you and I have seen this 1,000 times, they show up to say the Lindenwood Mega Camp, and they aren't ready, right? Because they have not. They're in good shape for whatever sport they were playing.
And that's what playing other sports should be about.
Yes.
Until you find your sport.
Yeah, and it's difficult because what happens during the football season? You decondition. What happens during basketball season? You decondition, right? What happens during baseball? You decondition, lacrosse, all that. Physically, your body starts to wear as you repeat those mechanics over and over. That does not necessarily strengthen it because the rest cycles are off. There's things going on, from a rest standpoint that are not great because you're playing back-to-back games over, multiple days. So, I think it's the easy thing is to throw up the graphic and say people play a lot of sports. The hard thing is that when you show up, let's say in a month from now, when the colleges are rolling into Lindenwood 1 month, pretty much from today, they are looking for guys that play football.
They're looking for football players.
They are,
and as the saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none. And so that's why I say, play multiple sports till you find your sport. And I was teasing guys because I'm, the Casey Varsity Combine's coming up, and I'm talking to guys, and I'm like, they're like, oh, I got a baseball game. I'm like, well, are you going to be a baseball player in college? Oh, no, sir, I'm a football player. Well,
and it's hard.
What's important? And hard. I get it.
It's really hard. So, like, I use Brady Davison as an example, who's down at over in Rockbridge, Columbia Rockbridge. He is a 3-sport athlete.
Yes.
I can tell you, just knowing, and working with him this off season, and he's doing 7-on-7 with us. Very difficult schedule because
unbelievable.
On the weekend,
and he still shows up at events.
Yeah, he still shows up, but it's a major event for the family to be able to get him there because he's got recruiting going on.
Yep.
He's got 7v7
playing
basketball.
Yeah.
He had baseball now, and then he's got exposure camps like Elite 11, and he's got he's done different combines. So it's a lot of planning that goes into it. But I would argue that, say he pitches on a Friday and he shows up Saturday to throw at the Elite 11.
That's what he did, yeah.
Probably not going to show as well as he would normally, only because the body can only do so much, right? But again, will that preclude him from playing college football?
Not at all.
He's a high-level guy.
Committed to Northern Illinois.
Yeah, he's a high-level guy, and he'll do just fine. But a guy like him, when he finally gets to just concentrate, right? Like everybody thought, oh, Brett Norfleet's going to go to Mizzou and he's going to play baseball.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work that way. I mean, Justin Gage, who we've had on the show, might be the last
multiple sport,
big time, multiple sport guy at Mizzou.
Right.
And he, he told us he liked to do it because he got out of winter conditioning so he could do his basketball. But, I think that argument, is a really tough one. And I get it because from the high school perspective, it's very frustrating when you have kids on your team. Yep. In your school that could help your baseball team or soccer team or whatever it might be, and they're playing another sport or they have other interests. So, we don't push kids one way or the other on it. Like it's a family decision, it's a personal decision. But I do think people need to take a big step back and think long term. Like, what do you want to do? If you just want to maximize your high school experience,
Yeah,
go play every sport, right? And do
absolutely.
it all.
Yeah.
If you want to play collegiately, which again, a lot of times kids say they want to play collegiately, but they have no idea what that really means. Their thought process is, well, I want to be that guy. He's getting the bracelets and the lanyards on his bag, and he's got the pictures,
Yeah.
taken at the school.
Posting all his fun visits and
and
everything. It's yeah.
kids don't know what that really represents, right? The heartache, the sacrifice,
Long
right?
hours, yeah.
I was telling some of our 7-on-7 kids like about how they to focus in on like what's important to them and why it's important, things they need to be cutting out. And we talked about making good decisions, and one of those good decisions was being around the right type of people. And I said, you have Brady Cook, who's a all-star quarterback, SEC, living the dream, what all of you want to do, right? You want to be that guy. He's making NIL money. He's on commercials. He's
Well known.
maximizing his experience.
Yeah.
He's the leader of the team, of the home state team. And I said, how many times do you guys think he goes out? I mean, how many times a week do you think he goes out? And is a man of the people. And they're all, probably 2-3 days a week. And I said, he goes out 2 times a season is what he's told me. 2 times. End of spring ball, end of the season. That's it. Right? Other than that, he's working on his schoolwork. He's doing his film study. He's taking care of his body. He's spending time with the people he loves, all that stuff, the people that are important. He's not living the social media thing. He's doing what is going to get him to where he wants to go.
And all that's going to come in really big time next year, this time when the NFL draft comes up.
Right. And people start doing background checks, right? And kids, I don't know the kids and families understand. So, in the position we're in, we get phone calls, usually in the fall, late summer, early fall, from NFL security, and they're doing background checks on guys. So they figure out like, hey, this guy worked out here. What can you tell me about him? What did he do? And truthfully, we've had to tell, a few kids over the years,
right,
that had some issues. Like, you want to be truthful.
And I got to tell you what, they're doing it earlier and earlier.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing this in high school. They're starting in high school
yeah.
because the NFL guys will come to me. They're like, yeah, I really like what you're doing. We want to know about the kid from high school on.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So,
they get lists of names early on, and they're starting to do checks and seeing who they are, because it is a valuable investment to them. Right. And not to think that a high school is, the high school experience is great. Well, the college guys, now that they're paying more money,
yeah.
There's going to be it's going to be going that way. So you would assume that, the NFL model of this, when you say NFL security, they're checking on, background checks, and then they help guys and they get in speeding tickets, all that type of stuff. But part of that process and their role is to focus on, who the people are and trying to weed out people that they don't want to invest a lot of money in because they might not make good decisions off the field.
Exactly. And that's what they're doing. And it's a total package that you got to do from high school, from what sports you're going to play. When should you maybe reduce that and focus on your main sport you want to play in college, or you want to be recruited for in college, and I'm going to do it all, and God bless them. There are guys who are doing stuff and they realize they really want to play college ball, and they came to KC Varsity last Saturday. They're coming this Saturday at Francis Howell. They know what they're going to do, and it's great that they do track, and it's great that they play baseball and they're good at it. But you got to go where your bread is buttered.
Yeah, and like on the flip side of it, like with the baseball guy, for instance, if you're playing baseball because you love baseball, you've played it since you've been a little kid, that's great.
Yep.
But if you're playing it as a pastime and that it's fun, and you're not doing all the things that's required by the baseball guys, right, to be viewed as a baseball prospect, then it is, it's a hobby. It is a hobby because, yes, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, if you're not doing the things, because I see what goes on in our facility with our baseball guys, they're lifting year round. Do not fool yourself.
Another year-round
most
sport.
times, they're lifting more than our football players. The reality of it is, football guys will lift for their off-season period, then they kind of die off in season. Baseball guys, because it's so data-driven now, they are very conscious of that, and they are lifting. I see them all the time. They're doing arm care throughout the year, right? All those things, and then they're going to showcases, and then they're going to, tournaments where they can be viewed by schools and scouts and all that. So, it goes all. Football's not unique in that sense. Football's
Right.
just a little different how we do it, but you cannot try and do all of them and try unless you are a Bo Jackson type athlete.
Which is what, once in a how long?
Once in 100 years.
Yeah.
I mean, like, honestly, like, he was very different. So, but I feel as though, like, there's a lot of conflicting messages, and I'm sure people get mad if you say, well, hey, start to specialize. We would never be the ones that say, hey, you need to stop playing other things. But as we talked about with Dylan Duff, I told his dad in middle school, hey, listen, I know he's a big basketball player. As evidence, he won state championship in basketball this year, and he was a key force in that. That doesn't mean he can't play basketball. It means he might need to pull back a little bit and really start focusing on his football development, right? And so as he started getting more serious about his football, and then try and balance both out.
Well, that's the key.
And that's what happened, right? And so now I was asking him, we're going to be able to play next year. Well, he's going to graduate early, right? So like that basically means basketball is done, right? So, and I asked him, are you going to play AAU this summer, right? And he laughed. He said, no, because he knows, like, he is now in preparation phase for his senior year and beyond. And so focusing on what you think the sport's going to be that you want to play in college. Again, if you want to just be a high school athlete, be a high school athlete. There's nothing wrong with it. Everybody has to retire from sports at some time.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then play it all and do as much as you can. But if you're telling us, like we hear all the time, that, hey, I want to be a college football player, then there has to be actions that start to get there. Because I will promise you, there'll be a large contingent that show up to the Lindenwood camp thinking that they are ready to go, and they're going to run into cats that have been training since January, and they are going to get exposed. And it's going to happen over and over and over. Like, if you're a quarterback and you haven't been throwing consistently since back in January, like, and just having your arm and the synchronicity of getting the ball out on time, it's not going to look good.
And that's really the key. And you can't say, I want to be this, and then you don't do what's necessary to be that. You can't complain, well, I was overlooked. Well, you were off here doing this, that, and the other thing, or you weren't preparing. And that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, what have you been doing? Camp season is here, right? And unfortunately, I'm seeing guys who are going to be their juniors, going to be seniors, and they're saying, I'm coming, I'm ready. This season's going to be different. Good luck with that, because you haven't done what you needed to get you to that level. And now you're hoping that you're telling coaches, and they're telling coaches, Coach, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Well, it doesn't work like that.
Saying and doing are two different things.
Yep.
Right. And so I was telling our young 7-on-7 guys the other day, like, look, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So if you lie to yourself and say, oh yeah, I'm going to go work out, I'm doing this and that, I can tell you, I see videos constantly of guys doing stuff that is counterproductive to their time. If you're going to spend time working out, you got to focus on your movement development. That's primary, right? So if you're going to work on your body, it's going to be movement related. So that's from a lifting perspective as well as a training perspective, from a movement training perspective. Stop wasting time with doing, repetitive drills that are memorized, right? Football is not a game of memory. It's a game of reaction. So there's numerous people that know how to do it, but if you're doing just bag drills and other than for a warm up, or doing hurdle drills, or doing speed ladder drills, you're wasting your time. And I see kid after kid after kid post it as if it's some accomplishment, but they've done study after study after study that will tell you they don't work. There's no, they've done studies with sports specific studies on speed ladders, and it's just memorization. And there is no acuity that is built through it other than memorizing the patterns that you're doing on the ground. That does not translate. So, reaction training, right? Building in some differences where you're reacting to another human, or reacting to a light, a sound, a color, whatever it might be, that's more realistic to a game you're going to play. So I think, spending time in the off season on things that are going to be proactive for you. If you're an offensive lineman, you need to be working around defensive linemen. Okay. We had a kid come in the day. He was a defensive lineman, and he's been working somewhere with a guy, and they're doing a bunch of stuff on air and a bunch of stuff around bags and a bunch of stuff around
trading against air is not helpful at all.
And he got in against a couple linemen that knew what they were doing. And he said, "Oh, this stuff doesn't work as good as I thought it was going to work." And I said, "Well, haven't you been going against live people?" He goes, "No, I just push against the coach every once in a while or a bag." And I said, "Yeah, that's not the game you play." Right. From the quarterback perspective, if you're a quarterback and you're training with someone and they're working solely on mechanics and they don't get you, unless, if you're in a private environment, yes. But if you're training, in a group environment, or you haven't done it much group training, and you're not around offensive and defensive linemen, newsflash, you're going to get rushed every single play in a football game.
Which is really cool at elite, like when the linemen are doing their training like that. You have your quarterbacks line up.
Oh, you have to, because
it's game situation, and they got a guy coming at them, right?
They have to get used to having pressure. So, there's a way that you move in the pocket efficiently. There's a way that you have to override. It is a skill set. Your brain is telling you, get out of there, right? It's fight or flight. It's basic human instinct. So you have a big person coming at you, and you have an opportunity to either stay and deliver or run, right? And 9 times out of 10, if they get you running, defense wins. So, if you're training in the off season and you are not doing game realistic type activities, yes, there is a moment in time when you have to train the technique, but then you have to put that technique to use, right? And if you're not able to do that, it is a waste of time. Like it is, I see far too many things online, and from a Twitter perspective, Instagram and YouTube, that it's really disappointing, because people think they are doing what they need, and then they will not figure it out until it's a little too late, right? And it's again, there's more ways to skin a cat, yes, but on the flip side, there's tried and true methods that we know work, and a lot of kids rush to the easiest fix, right?
Oh, without question. Path of least resistance is what everybody wants. And I mean, you saw past Saturday in Kansas City who trained and who didn't. And guess what? The guys who were taking the MVP awards, the guy who won the King of the Hill, they train regularly. Marcel Reed, who won the King of the Hill, he was part of the Boom Trench Warfare team last year. He's been in there. He's trained
on Sundays, training constantly.
Yeah, he's all the guys on the KC side, the last linemen and them that were there. They train with Chris Gomez over in Kansas City and stuff like that. And so, it was a great time, and I'm really excited to see what St. Louis does here with it, because high energy, just everybody's motivated, it's fun, but it's there are also coaches there, college coaches there, and that's really what you need to be going to at this time of the year, because there's a few other places, some of them reach out to me, hey, we're from, I don't know, New Jersey, and we're coming through Kansas City, or we're coming through St. Louis. We'd love you to show up. And I'm like, well, but there's only 2 places. There's really only elites, the Elite Combine and KC Varsity Combine. You've been doing it for 16 years. We've been doing it together for 16 years. Wayne Orr and KC Varsity have been doing it for 12. They're the real deal. Professionally run. You guys are working the KC Varsity at Francis Howell. There's a reason for that, right? When Wayne decided to come over to this side of the state to do this spring showcase, spring combine, that's, he reached out to me. He came to Elite on this past one. Everybody knows. And so that's really what you want to do. You don't just want to train. You want to go to the reputable, professionally run places, not just somebody who's rolling through town, or not just somebody who's wanting to sell you a hype video or ask you to pay money so that you can read about yourself, or they're going to write something about you in a favorable manner,
Because no one's reading that other than family and friends.
No.
And that's not to be mean, but
there used to be scrapbooks back in the day. You'd get your newspaper clippings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of MVPs, one of our quarterbacks and the guys that work hard and train and has a full schedule, Carson Boyd.
Oh my gosh.
Carson Boyd goes down to the UA Next camp in, I believe it was Canton, Ohio.
It was in Canton, Ohio.
And he won the MVP. Another kid that was in the facility last night, a couple weeks ago, Corey Sims. He went to the one in Tennessee. He's the MVP. Yes, they are guys coming in with highly rated, figures around them, stars or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But they are both guys that have worked their tails off. I mean, so I got a text from Carson's dad, and he had let me know that that had happened, and it was really cool to see. And we're kind of back and forth about like the pathway. Years ago, we had conversations about this moment in time, and the first time he got his first offer, which was Texas A&M, his dad had called me, and I said, "Hey, this has kind of been part of the plan, right? Because he's been working his butt off. He's mechanically sound. He's done all the things he's supposed to do, right? They have not really veered from the plan. They just kind of keep working. He's a guy that shows up. There's no fanfare, no like, oh, I don't want to do that drill because this. No, he just shows up and does it, right? And so to me, it's exciting to see that component of how he treated the development process, and now what it's the fruit it's bearing for him. And so, yeah, he's an Illinois commit. That's awesome. But he's also getting up there and competing with, some of the best kids in the country, and he's coming out on top.
And it's no surprise because, like you said, you've been training him since he was little.
5 years old.
First came to the elite combine as a 7th grader.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying to you, wow, I didn't realize at the time that you guys were training him, but like, look at this 7th grader.
Yeah.
Just absolutely, he was throwing it as well as some seniors. And so he's just been on it, and he's the ideal guy you want as a football player and a quarterback. Yeah. He's smooth is how I would describe it. I don't want to say mild mannered because he's a competitor. He's a high level competitor, but he's just smooth. He plays within himself. He plays at a different speed.
Yes.
Which is what you see quarterbacks like that. They're going to be highly successful. It slows down. The game slows down, right? He plays with an urgency, but it's all controlled and it's all just smooth. And then bam,
yep,
he strikes like a cobra with that boom.
Oh yeah,
quick release, very
quick release,
accurate.
And then he's got a quick accelerator when he decides to run as well.
Absolutely, 4.5, 40 speed as well.
Just an absolute, blessing, that we connected when he was young because they were open-minded to training and developing. He obviously had a passion to play quarterback, right? As a little guy.
Mm-hmm.
But, I will tell you, like a lot of those little guys, when they come in, we see guys at 5 and 6 years old, but there's certain kids when they walk in the door, you notice different things about them, right? And for instance, there was a kid a couple weeks ago I was watching, he might have been 8 or 9 and he was throwing. And I looked at one of the guys. I was like, "Did you see him?" And the guy's like, one of our other quarterbacks. Yeah, I saw him. I said, "What'd you think?" He's like, "He can throw it." I'm like, "No." I was like, "He's different."
Right.
There's certain things you see at an early age, right? And that doesn't mean there's some guys that have come in when they're early age, like, "Oh, he's pretty good," and then before you know it, you're looking at each other laughing, like, "My gosh, this guy can rip it," right?
Mm-hmm.
So. And throwing the ball well is just a component of playing quarterback.
It's one part, yeah.
What's your demeanor? How well do you adapt to change? How well do you see the field? All those things come into really how well you're going to do, right? And I think we saw that in the draft this weekend. It's going to be really curious to see how well those guys do, right?
Yeah, some of them you can tell how they're going to do and how well they're not going to do. And it's like, why was that?
Striking at that level too with the NFL. I mean, sometimes I do feel like they get forced into certain picks based off of who's available and what their need is.
And a lot of times guys fall in love with guys.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that has really helped me over the years is I don't fall in love with players. You see college coaches, you see reporters, you see, recruiting, scouting services. They fall in love with a particular player. I don't get emotionally involved.
Yeah.
And it's very helpful because a lot of decisions are made, especially with recruiting services, so they fall in love with a particular player for whatever reason. And you got to leave that out to make the sensible.
Yeah. And I think the tough thing is too, and I think we can go down this path because I saw, I'll just say Clint Cosgrove the other day put a tweet out. He used to be with Rivals. And I don't even know what he's doing. I think NIL stuff, but he got into he put a tweet out that was and I thought it was very interesting that he said, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if the scouting services, they call themselves the news reporting rivals, 24/7s, on threes, pulled back the curtain and showed how they rated these kids."
Oh yeah,
And so he brought that up, and of course that kind of gets a lot of people talking and thinking about the process. But
I'll tell you how it's done.
yeah,
It's how it's done is you have various analysts or whatever they are from various markets, and they do get together, and it's like, well, this guy says he likes this guy, just what I'm talking about. They love this guy and they love that guy, and this is why they can't break it down in a logical analytical reason per se as to why this guy is the number 3 ranked guy or should be the number 3 ranked guy and this guy should be the number 10 ranked guy. There's none of that really involved, or very little of that involved, and that sounds like what you're talking about. What he said, um, it's really done by that, but the majority of it is done by offers. Who has offers and from whom? And I'll go even further than that. A lot of it is based upon how many subscribers does a particular team's site have, and what are their commitments. And, what are what's the fan base going to see? Well, this site has, I don't know, 5,000 subscribers. So they have this commitment from this guy. We got to juice that guy up because these guys are going to want to read about this guy. And so there's a lot of that goes into it. Now, the very cream of the crop, anybody can see. My grandma can tell who the best. If you line them all up, you can tell who the very best of the best is in anything. But there's a lot of that. There's a lot of just their own personal favorites, their own personal guys. A lot of these guys have allegiances to certain colleges or universities, and so that factors into it as well.
So yeah, and
That's probably what he's talking about.
And that is, and so I think the tough thing is when you're analyzing, those athletes, parity across leagues across the country is not. It's not easy to do, right? You can't compare Florida football to St. Louis football. Can't compare Wyoming football to Alabama football. I mean, there are a lot of differences, but what I will say is my experience, and I know you know this, when someone puts that blessing on someone of that 4-star or 5-star,
Yep.
those kids, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. They get a longer leash than kids that were walk-ons or 3-stars, right? It's just how it works. And so, they don't want to see that kid fail, right? And then when they do fail, it's a crash and burn usually, right? It's a really, and the kid doesn't understand what happened. A lot of times it's bad choices on their part, right? Off the field. But a lot of times, those kids are giving every opportunity to succeed. And there might be someone on the team that's equal, if not better than them. But unfortunately, there's just a lot of politics when it gets to that level. And to think that those stars and that stuff does not, like everybody, oh, when you get on campus, everything's equal. That's not the way it usually works, because especially nowadays, that money is involved, right? Somebody is paying.
That's a big.
Somebody is paying for that athlete to be there. And so I think there's to say that there's not an influence on that would be very, very disingenuous. And I think, I'll give you a quick story about a young man I was talking to the other day. Major Power 4 team, perennial all-star. They've got all the guys, right? They have a big star-studded team right now. And he was there, and they changed coaches. And he said he gave it a year before he decided to transfer. And the coach was very, very open with the team about, hey, listen, I am going to play the best guys possible, but understand there are forces at play, and I have to win, because if I win, I can shut the boosters up and the people paying and the collective paying for these guys, and then I get to decide where the money's going. Because right now, if the money is being paid to these guys, they're supposed to be getting on the field because they want to see a return on what they invested in. So the opposite of that is a new coach coming in is like, hey, listen, I'm going to do it my way, and I want to show you what I'm going to do. But the only way to cure that is by winning, right? And so the young man said, basically kids from that home state were getting pretty much the right of way,
Yeah,
if you will,
most
to
the,
the
the biggest
field,
push. Yeah,
right? Because it's a big state
Yep.
with a lot of football players in it, and there's a lot of politics. So, and that brings me to another subject that I wanted to talk about. And I think it's gonna be very interesting to see how college football unfolds over the next 5 to 10 years, because if you think about it in terms of what's going on in the game, the colleges have never made more money than what they're making right now. Okay. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, because the NIL component is, yes, the players are getting paid, and a lot of people say, well, they're getting paid what they deserve. Okay, fine. I'm not going to fight. I agree. They should be getting a piece of the pie. But the system is not correct, because, in any financial transaction, there is a return, there's a give and take. So I own a business, someone works for me, I pay them a wage for what they give me, and it has to be commensurate with the value they bring, right? In this model, what we're seeing is the college is making all this money off of licensing, TV, ticket sales, all of that, right? They're getting extra money through the conference. All of those things are rolling into, let's say, 12 universities in a conference. They're not paying a dime. They're on the hook for what? A scholarship, right? Which is also funded by people donating money to the university.
correct.
So it's a game where they are making all the money. And why do they not want it to change? They're sitting right now in a great position. They have other people, outside influences, people that have a lot of money, and people raising money are paying for their players. But that is not impacting their money that they're making. So the pendulum will swing back at some point, but then that creates a whole nother issue, because the schools do not want to get involved in paying, because if they get involved in paying, then there's employment issues, right?
Oh yeah.
There's going to be unionization issues. There's going to be Title IX implications, because if they pay the football players, they start paying a kid $1 million. Well, they got to start paying that same amount of money for all the other sports.
Yeah.
Now it's not as lucrative for them to be in college football. So right now they are in the golden era of making money and having someone else pay for them. But at some point, and I can't believe more people are not really like talking through the logistics of this, because it does not make sense.
Yeah.
I love it for the players, but it does
Right.
not make sense financially.
Right. No, I mean, they're all the benefits.
They get all the benefits,
All the benefits
with
none
very
of the
little
risks.
risk.
Yeah.
Right? A kid gets hurt, their insurance kicks in on it. That's about it, right? I mean, there are fringe benefits that they're paying for, which is part of the scholarship. And then if the kid gets good grades, the conference, and then pay a little bit of money to the athletes. But that's minuscule.
Really, who's gonna say what about it? The fans? Are the fans gonna say anything about it?
No.
The players are just happy to, be getting something.
Right.
Players and parents are happy to be getting something. You have all these people popping up around them now who are also wanting to put their hand out, and whether it's through the transfer portal or through whatever. I mean, I'm seeing like open what seems to me like would be street agents back in the day.
Oh yeah.
That's just popping up under the guises of we're just helping you out. We're just doing business.
Well, yeah,
But-
and then again, the NCAA is going to continue to lose their grip, because at some point that guy that's being that intermediary agent, because the kids can have agents now.
Yep.
Like they have no real say in it, because they can't have people go talk on their behalf. Really, they're not supposed to, but it's a free market.
Yep.
Like who's going to stop that? It's not illegal for them to do it. It might be against the NCAA's guidelines, but
is any of that really
federally-
enforced?
yeah, federally,
much?
like
Yeah.
the government has spoken on this, and it is what it is. I know they're trying to change some legislation on it, but it's a slippery slope, because if the pendulum swings back and the universities need to pay now, it's going to be a shift. It goes from everybody enjoying it to, do you think that these universities are going to be as generous as the collectives are? Absolutely not.
No.
They're not going to, a state institution is not going to be as efficient as a private entity run by businessmen.
Yeah, at some point it'd probably be good if you just saw sponsorships, like the Emo's Pizza Missouri Tigers, just as an example. And then they just picked up the tab on everything, and then cut through all the pretenses of what everything is, because it's semi-pro sports now. It's professional. and it's just going to keep going that way.
It's
And,
gonna.
and the diehard fans hate it when you say that. You know, I know some
But
people.
it's the truth. These guys are
It's the
getting
truth.
paid
Well,
as they
nobody
should
wants to hear the
be.
truth. Yeah.
But on the flip side, like there's a lot of moving parts that I think you know once the government ruled on the name, image, and likeness, there's no putting the cat back in the bag unless, and it's still going to be the same thing. It just becomes who pays for it. If the universities have to start to pool their money into that, it's going to change because of all the other federal laws involved with Title IX and things of that nature, that it's going to be a very slippery slope. And so, and you know that I mean they've tried to unionize numerous teams, and it's kind of getting pushed away, but at some point that's not going to happen.
No,
It's going to, you know, the NCAA as we know it will probably be gone, if not completely gone. Which then what's going to be a cascade effect? It's going to affect the lower level schools, which is going to really
Big time.
ding them up, because where's the NCAA's money come from? Football and basketball. So if they lose that, who's going to help run the infrastructure for these schools, like the D2s and the FCS schools? I mean,
other sports are going to wind up
Yeah, but-
suffering. You're going
and you know, and back
see
to your
them
point
disappear.
on the shadiness, you know, it was come to my attention that there was a kid that one of our players we train, was talking about one of his teammates, and he's at a FCS school, and oddly enough, was talking to a scout who said, "Hey, tell him to stay where he's at. He's a grown man, he's dominating, and he will have a better draftability out of there, right?" And so, like SEMO just had a kid get drafted, so this kid could get drafted out of an FCS school. And he says that to the teammate, they passed it along, and the teammate's like, "Oh yeah, he's going to stay," and all that, which is great. And then come to find out behind the scenes, there's teams who have been hitting this athlete up, enticing him with, you know, tens of thousands of, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
You mean what
come to
could
their
be
school.
considered tampering?
But they do it through Instagram in vanish mode. So it just goes away, right? As we know, if it gets subpoenaed, obviously nothing really vanishes.
Yeah.
But it has to come to that level, right? And they're not breaking any federal laws. They're
Right.
not breaking. They're breaking NCAA guidelines. So, you know, that is going on. That is an issue, right? And so, I just see a lot of room for improvement in the process, but I do think they're not putting the cat back in the bag, and I do not think the universities want to get involved. So that's why you've seen them be kind of mum on it, because they know they're getting while the getting's good, and they are making more money than they know what to do with.
Yeah.
Right. And it's
cash
funding
grab.
all their other athletics programs and building new buildings and all that stuff. And it'll be interesting to see how it works out.
It's a cash grab. It is. And, you know, I tell people all the time, it's not going to look the same 5-10 years from now as to what you're seeing right now. So it is going to be really interesting. Speaking of schools and recruiting and stuff, the Missouri Tigers locally picking up a couple of big names. Jason King out of DeSmet, player that you know well, Jack Lang from Eureka.
Yeah, I mean, you got to close your borders in, right? And I think that's what Mizzou's done or is doing. And I think they're, you know, they got a lot. They're playing with a lot of equity right now, right? They are. Their star players are from St. Louis, so you know, especially last year and then going into this year. So you got those guys. It'll be interesting. I was talking to someone the other day, like, name the last star linebacker from St. Louis. Michael Shear. There have not been a lot that have come out of our area.
They go up to Mizzou, or
they go to Mizzou.
Yeah. There hasn't been a lot. I mean, that's
Michael Shear, and then you had Eric Beisel was another linebacker. Jason King will have an opportunity to be one of the first in a long while to be, you know, there's certain position groups that have done well at Mizzou from St. Louis. And if you just go back, I don't know if it's style of play. I don't know if it's just what it is, you know, what the past staffs have seen, but like he can break that trend.
There's certain position groups that more are developed in Missouri than others, and linebackers not necessarily one that's been. In fact, you just made me try to think of like who some of the other top ones were.
There hasn't been,
Come on, there hasn't been
there's
many.
not been many.
Right, but Jason King, two-time elite combine guy, started out playing quarterback back in his
Yeah.
youth football, and has developed really nice with him. Jack Lang, another guy who's has a lot of good football ahead of him. Big frame,
Tall,
6'7",
fast.
6'8" guy, fast, very athletic. So he's a guy who, we'll see how they'll develop. A guy who really intrigued me. Again, of course, I've followed him for a while, but who was a co-MVP at the quarterback is Rocco Marriott.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you
the
for
former
me.
Mizzou player.
Right. You were talking about Carson Boyd earlier. Rocco is a guy who went to the UA, I guess his next camp,
Mhm.
really, really crushed it. Elite 11, crushed it. 6'3" plus into some change, 205 pounds, running a 4.9, 4.59,
Yeah.
40, 4.6, 40. Just amazing. I think his father.
Yeah, no, his
Yeah.
father. And and Preston Brown did really well
He
at Elite 11.
top athlete,
He was
Elite
the
11.
one of the
He
top
was that
guys.
in Ohio.
They ran apparently in 40-degree weather. They ran their
Wow.
40s and with wind, and
Yeah.
not a great day for 40s. But
No.
uh,
No, there's the level of quarterbacks
Oh.
that are being developed. Speaking of not necessarily a lot of big time linebackers, the quarterbacks in the state of Missouri. We were talking about Brady Davidson before that. We've talked for a long time before it actually came to fruition about the 5 or 6 D1 quarterbacks in the state, and boom, 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 boom. That all just fell into line. We were talking about it like the first show.
yeah, and then they've fallen in line. And
Yep.
like Hoyt Gregory just got another offer from Samford.
Yep.
He's got
Preston's
Florida,
right there.
Preston is right there. I know he's got
Pull the trigger.
teams coming in to watch him throw, and
Yep.
athletically, there's not many people like him.
No.
He's got a flash, not like a lot of other guys. I mean, but he's going to get somewhere. You watch his brothers down at SEMO.
Yeah.
He'll play as a true freshman. I mean, he's
without a
he
doubt.
dominated their spring game. So yeah, I think there's just so many guys, and it's cool because we've played a large role in a lot of those kids, if not all of them, developing them and getting to see them come through the pipeline. And then you always kind of look to the next crop of guys, right? So like there's groups, there'll be lulls, and then there'll be a group, and those guys usually have trained together and developed, but you can kind of start seeing it form when they're in middle school. So
you can, and just the development of players, like I said, across the state and regions, just crazy good. Another player who should be on the upward swing, and a guy that Mason Went was in Kansas City, made it to the finals of the King of the Hill. Was a little nervous. I talked to him afterwards. I put up a video reel, and he's in it, and he makes a really nice play. But he's like, yeah, I was nervous.
Oh, he's such a good kid.
At first play, I was nervous. He's a guy who's like a legit 6'3", 6'4", 300 pounds.
Yep.
And athletic.
And a worker bee.
Just really gets after, plays center, and just to see him go against the top competition from around the region, because there were guys there from Iowa and Oklahoma, and other places. And so Mason, just, shout out to him as well. Really helped himself.
Speaking of guys with talent, that this weekend is always fun when you get to see the draft and how that works. Makai Wingo, guy trained a whole lot at our facility, got drafted. He's going to the Lions. Isaiah Williams got signed by the Lions, which is, I think that's 5 or 6 St. Louis guys on the Lions, which a lot of people don't realize. Ray Agnew, who used to play for the Rams, whose sons both trained with us, or all 3 of his sons trained with us. Malcolm, who's coaching out of Stanford, Ray Jr., who's a scout with the Jets.
A lot of Agnews.
Yeah, they are a football family.
Seemed like they were there for like a decade.
And so, but he's the assistant GM with the Lions, and so Isaiah's going up there, which is awesome. He's one heck of an athlete who transitioned.
Jameson Williams there, right?
Yeah, he'll be up there with Jameson Williams, who he played junior football with. Corey Patterson was their coach, who's now at Purdue. But then we had another guy, Austin Jones, who was a St. Louis guy. He grew up all through middle school, and then moved out to California. We trained he and his brother. His brother was a running back coach the last couple of years at Lindenwood, but Austin got picked up. I'm trying to think who he got. He was playing at USC. He got picked up. Justin Strong, who was at SIU, got picked up by the Colts. Who else? We had Cody Schrader, of course, got picked up by the 49ers. And then DJ Miller, defensive back, John Burrows, boom, trained with us all through the cycle. He was fighting a bad knee throughout the season. Got that cleaned up. Still had a great pro day, and got
So
picked up by the
where did
Chiefs.
DJ ultimately wind up college wise?
Kent State.
Kent
Went
State.
to Iowa
Went
State to
Iowa-
Kent State.
Yeah, Iowa
Yep.
State to Kent
Yep.
State.
Mark Watson.
Another guy, great kid. And what's so cool about what we do is we get to see those guys when they're young,
Oh, yeah.
and then see them reach this level. You know, you can't beat that.
And so like the way it works too, like a lot of people like get so hyped up on the draft, and then people start to kind of like get this negative connotation, like 6th and 7th round, like, oh, he's only a 6th or 7th, right? He's in the top 200
Right.
guys in college football. What
Yeah.
are we talking about?
Right.
But then the process is as soon as the draft starts to wind, they start calling the agents, right? And so those guys will start to get the free agent deals. And like Tony Adams talked about, you know, they sometimes get in bidding wars. Sometimes being undrafted is even better because
Mhm.
the signing bonuses can be pretty good, right? There's a priority free agent process, and some of those guys, if they think other teams have like, if they try to sleep on them and then realize like, oh, there's 4 other teams going for this guy, it can become really good. So, you know, like in the case of Michael Neese last year, like he had talked about, he was with the Buccaneers in training camp, started a bunch of games for them. And then we started like doing the research on the 2 linemen they had brought in that were free agents. And then you can start to see the cap dollars. So they had paid him over a couple $100,000 in guarantees. So in signing bonus. So then you know the coach says, hey, look, you outplayed these guys, but there's other things at play. So that's how that works, right? So then that guy gets, you know, kind of like pushed out because this money is on their list. So somebody liked that person enough, even though they might not have played as well or panned out in the near term, they're going to bet on the long run. And then the other guy outplayed him could be looking for a home. Then they get signed. They get you know off the waivers. And they sign, and now they're there, and they push somebody else out. So it's a vicious cycle. But you know, guys that can stick around and stick through the league and then get active duty turns into a really good situation for him. So the guys that got picked up, I can see them all doing really well. I think Mekhi Wingo will be a really interesting player for. I think he fits really well with what they're doing in Detroit. I think that's a really good
Bunch of St. Louis guys on that Detroit Lions team now.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. So, you know, it is cool seeing those guys from little kids and then getting to talk to their parents about the process and you know, going through. Justin Strong's a guy, you know, he was an Althoff guy, and his brother Bryson, he and his brother Bryson both played boom and trained and just awesome guys. But, you know, he did his pro day, and he had the 8th best running back results since 1983 from combine as well as you know the combine and the pro days. So there's a system, that relative athletic score, RAS score, that basically you know says, hey, here's where you rank, and it's based off your speed, all those parameters, your height and weight, all those parameters go into it, and then it kicks out a score. And his was top, you know, he was number 8, so he's beaten out, you know, all pro guys over the years. So that will get you an invite to a camp,
Yeah.
right? And the way it works is there's the priority free agents, and then there's the free agent, like they kick the tires, and there's 1-day workout guys. So you'll see those guys will get signed to a 1-day deal where they come in and, you know, basically try out. So years ago, my brother represented a guy as an agent, 1-day camp, tryout, begged to get this guy into the camp, begged, and they didn't want to do it. And he was a local guy up in Minnesota because he had 2 guys on Minnesota Vikings at the time. And they brought him in for a 1-day workout, and he survived, stayed there the second day, made it through, and it was Adam Thielen, who ended up being, you know, all pro. So, you know, the agents can play a big deal in the process of getting you into camp.
Oh, without question.
And if you they don't play a deal at all getting you drafted. They play a huge part if you're undrafted about where you're going to go.
Right.
And who their connections are.
Right.
So, but the process is fun. You know, it's one step at a time. If you're in middle school, be the best middle school player you can be. Focus on becoming a better athlete. Every one of these guys is great athletes. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But if you're in high school, obviously take care of what you need to take care of physically, mentally, emotionally, and then the rest of it will take care of itself. But be focused on what your goals are. right? And there's a lot of outside influences that at your school, there's a lot of outside influences with voices of people that don't know. There's a lot of outside influences of people that are trying to get things from you, but you need to do yourself a favor and get around people that can help you navigate the process.
Yep, without question. And the other thing is, don't get too caught up in your rankings. Don't get too caught up in where you go to play. You talking about Justin Strong. A lot of these guys you saw drafted, nobody had ever heard of before. They were not super high ranked guys. None of that matters. None of that matters. Just like, people are concerned about offers or they're going to this guy, or now you're seeing people trying to like make promises to people that they're gonna, place them. I actually saw one thing where somebody's talking about, well, they're able to place a player
Oh.
because they have contacts. Somebody has
I have
contacts.
contacts too,
Somebody-
and guess what?
You
ain't
don't
placing
you're not placing them.
anybody.
No, there's two people that can get you a scholarship: a head coach of a football team and yourself.
Yep.
And that's who you need to rely on as far as that goes. Anything else is you look at with a,
So yeah, I mean, you'll be at these camps, mega camps. Talking to a quarterback last night, he has an offer. It's not committable to the head coach season throw.
correct.
Okay, that's normal
That is
because the
normal.
head coach wants to know. I'm only taking one guy in this class. I have to buy off and see. I got to see, make sure that there's just kick the tires and make sure that everything's good. here.
Final words, sign
right?
off on it. Yeah.
Because there's a lot invested in that. And so that's how it works. And so it's okay, right? Offers to hold your interest and tell you that they really like you, but they do need to, make one final check off. And so if a coach on a staff that is employed by that head coach cannot give you the scholarship, who do you think in our community or any community around the country can call and get you a scholarship? No, it doesn't work that way. The head guy, the recruiting coordinator, and all the coaches have to come to an agreement, but the head guy is the guy who pulls the trigger and says yes or no on people. That's
Right.
just the way it works.
That is the way it works. And there's people that you need to surround yourself who will help you, on your path, your head coach in high school, your trainers, various people like that, coaches, advisors, stuff like that. But they cannot, anybody tells you they can guarantee you an offer. They're not being
And if they're asking you for money
well
to get you that offer, I mean, hey, I will help you as much as I can help you. You'll help them. But the reality of it is, someone's going and saying, "Hey, pay me,
X amount.
$800, $1,000,
And
$1,200
I'll place you.
to
I'll
place
you.
Like it's not, I think there was someone doing that with guys into the Ivy League and they got in trouble.
Really?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think some superstars, Hollywood stars did.
Oh
jail
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
I do think the process is fairly simple if you take care of what you need to take care of. Your grades obviously are
Yep.
are something great. You're keeping your nose clean, staying out of trouble. I heard a situation today with a young college guy just signed, got arrested doing some things that he shouldn't have been doing. My first question is what's the university going to do? Because that can void your code of conduct and they
Yep.
walk from you. That's a life-changing decision.
Yeah.
So yeah, keeping your nose clean, working out and staying prepared, maximizing what God gave you is a huge component of it. And then, being a student of the game,
Yep.
like actually learning the game that you play. And that doesn't mean Madden. That means learning the game that you play. And I asked some of our kids the other day, we were training, and I asked how many of them have ever read the rule book of football, right? And none of them raised their hand. I said, you might want to learn the rules of the game you're playing. You assume you know them, but until you've read it and gone through them, like you don't know the game. So that would be like, hey, look, I want to own a business, but I haven't got the slightest clue about, how to manage a bank account, how to learn all the tips and tricks of like how to keep your head above water, right?
Mhm.
Like what does this mean? What does this mean? So you got to get the basic ground rules. So a lot of kids just be a student of the game.
Right.
That can get you a lot further than just, showing up and running routes. Actually learning how the game is played, listening to people that know what they're talking about, talk about dissecting defenses. If you're an offensive guy, learn about defenses. If you're a defensive guy, learn about offenses. I mean, I am continually shocked at the level of naivete that is persists with kids when it comes to the game of football, and especially kids that say they want to play college football. Like it's mind numbing how little situationally aware people are of the game. And it just goes to show that the focus sometimes on the wrong things. And so listen to your coaches, listen to what they're talking to you about. Do not assume you know more than you do because you've watched a couple NFL games or played some Madden or played 2 years of high school football.
Yeah.
Don't assume. Learn, ask questions, get in the books, learn, read about there's books about football. Read them.
Speaking of learning, camp season is here. It's up, combine's coming up Saturday. Combine trading tonight, Thursday, a couple of more chances. And then, of course, leading up into the other stuff coming up.
Yeah, we actually will have a combine course starting on I think it's the 13th. It'll be Tuesdays and Thursdays. It'll run right up to the night before Lindenwood. If you want to work on your 40 starts, you want to work on your technique of how to run pro agility, you want to work on broad jump, just the techniques of how to do it. And Marcus Snozick helps lead that for us. He's tested tens of thousands of athletes, trained them, and has got an unbelievable eye for technique and can help give tips and tricks that will literally shave tenths of seconds, which will literally open people's eyes.
Absolutely. You're going to go to Lindenwood Camp, which you talk to a lot of kids in Kansas City, and a lot of guys are going to show up to that. You definitely don't want to go in unprepared because, you want to talk about only having one chance to make a good impression. The first impression is the best impression. You want to make sure that you are well prepared before you head into any of your college camps coming up.
I was going to leave you with this. The laser does not know what you tell people you run the 40 in. It does not know what your Twitter bio says. It does not care what you say you run. It only knows what you just ran that rep. Okay. Yes, it is 0.2 of a second slower than a hand time on average. So if you're running a 4.9, you're going to show up there running a 5.1. Coaches understand that. They know it's a laser. They're watching it. But it's a laser start, laser finish. But what you do know is that they can then look at the body of work of everybody that's been at that camp and compare you against them. Okay. So yeah, the 4.9 looks better on hand time, but if that other guy running a 4.9 is running a 5.1 as well, right? And so they can kind of see. But just so you know, we have had numerous kids at the Lindenwood camp run 4.4s on that same laser. So it is, and we have 3 systems. It's all the exact same thing. They time out the exact same way. It's a standardized process. It's the same company they use at the NFL Combine. It's standardized. You can't cheat the system.
Right. Exactly.
Get
and
faster.
so I see guys and I see how their other testing goes, and a lot of it that they're unhappy. They just don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to run it. They don't have the proper technique. So definitely worth checking that out. You can check us out, KC Varsity Combine this weekend. We are both going to be there. KCVarsityCombine.com. Check out Football 360 Show at football360show.com. Where can people reach you on the Twitter and
Twitter, just Elite Football, and then Elite Football Academy on Instagram, EliteFootball.net on the internet.
JP Rock MO on X and JP Rock Scouts U on Instagram. It goes by fast. Enjoyed ourselves as always. Going to have some good stories, I'm sure, after this weekend. And we'll see you on Saturday, and we'll talk to you next week. Everybody stay safe.